Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Outer Rim Ramble with myself, the Outlaw Adam Neeson, joined as always by the Jedi Knight Danny Brown. Danny, how are you after a long trip to Dublin yesterday?
I am wonderful.
Hmm.
No, I'm actually really tired. I'm knackered. Some driving yesterday, but you know what? It was all totally worth it. Like, I think, we had a ball, meeting Anthony Daniels and speaking with Will Sliney and Charles Soule and Rory Coleman. And yeah, it was just great. And so many like people like out and around the convention center. It was really nice. And it was nice to kind of also be like asked about Outer Rim and for some people to kind of recognize us and to bump into old friends and new friends. And yeah, it was great. It was great. I mean, when is this episode going out? Probably people will be like, did they not go to Dublin Comic Con weeks ago? So at the time of recording, Dublin Comic Con was only yesterday. But yeah, it was a wonderful time. But I am a very, very sleepy boy today. How are you? You got a day off, you bastard.
I did. My legs were sore from walking. It was like
Mm.
10 hours of walking,
We did
talking.
some amount of steps, like.
Mm. We talked to and we met Anthony Daniels, who lovely until he's in front of a crowd of people, and then you ask him a question, and he sort of makes the question into how brilliant he is.
Not that we're complaining.
Not that we're complaining, but I'll tell
No.
you a Tony that I do know who's brilliant. Our guest today, uh, a
Hey!
gentleman whose career I've been following for the last 15 years through Some Jerk with the Camera, his own podcast, Escape from Walt Disney, and being one of the biggest Weird Al fans that I know of. Today, joining us on the podcast all the way from the US of A is Mr. Tony Goldmark. Tony, how are you, sir?
It's my lot in life to suffer as well. Thank you very much.
Do you think, Tony, you could take Anthony Daniels in a fight?
I can barely take anyone in a fight. I mean, is that just where your mind goes naturally? I mean, I hate to make stereotypes about Irish people, but do you
Wow.
instantly leap to, two people with the same name? Oh, who could take who in a fight? Is that
Th- You
I
gotta
don't know.
battle them.
Yeah.
Name doppelgangers, gotta fight.
I might want to fight Anthony Daniels though, because a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, Luke Ski, has kind of an Anthony Daniels horror story. I'm telling this story secondhand, so I'm gonna get some details wrong, and I'm sorry, Luke, if you're listening, but he was scheduled to perform at some con. I think it was either Star Wars Celebration or Comic Con, one of the Comic Cons, but but he was set to perform during the masquerade while the judges were all making their decisions, and Anthony Daniels, I think, was hosting the masquerade, and Daniels decided kind of at the last minute, you know what? I'm not going to let this guy perform. I'm just going to do a Q&A for the 15 minutes that he was set to perform, instead of letting this guy perform for 15 minutes. So he basically screwed over my friend Luke, and because this was a really big professional opportunity for him, and Anthony Daniels just decided, nah, I'm just gonna do a Q&A. Fuck this guy. So,
Mm.
and I know he still holds a grudge against him to this day. He would tell a more accurate version of that story. I'm just kind of telling it secondhand, but
But what you're telling me is 3PO fucked over Luke?
yeah, 3PO fucked over Luke again. But yeah, I stories like that made me wish George had gone with his instinct to cast Stan Freberg as the voice. But anyway, speaking of Stan Freberg, he was on a show with Weird Al, which is who we're actually talking about in this
What
episode.
we're here for.
See, Tony gets it. Tony gets the segues.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes, we're here to talk about some of our favorite Weird Al Star Wars songs. Now, as far as I know, Tony, there's only two. Is that correct?
Not quite. There are actually more than two Weird Al Star Wars songs. There's two big ones.
Mhm.
The two most prominent associations that Weird Al has had to Star Wars are, of course, his songs Yoda and the Saga Begins. He actually has a couple more rarities, some very, very deep cuts that aren't even on his albums, and we can talk about those later, unless you would like to talk about them now as kind of a build-up.
Yeah, let's sort of jump into it because it's like, is it is it stuff is it a parody or is it some of his more original work?
No, no, it's well, in 2022, Al did the voice of a character named Vic Vanko in the special Lego Star Wars Summer Vacation, which is
Mhm.
available to watch on Disney Plus. I know it's available on Disney Plus here in the States. I think it's on Disney Plus in Ireland as well.
Oh, yeah, we got
And
it. We got it.
he recorded a song for that special called Scarif Beach Party, which was even released as a single on Spotify and other streaming platforms. Now, Al did not write Scarif Beach Party. It would be a pretty huge stretch to call it like a completion of his trilogy of Star Wars songs or whatever, but it does exist, and it's technically a song with Al's voice on it, so I count it. But then, I'm a big Weird Al rarities collector. And another Weird Al rarity about Star Wars that he's recorded, and now this is a very short song, but still technically a song, or at least a bunch of songs with the same melody, for a 2014 College Humor video called Star Wars Cantina Band Auditions, which can be found on what has been rebranded as the Dropout YouTube channel, because College Humor doesn't really exist anymore. But in the video, various music stars, including Chris Daughtry, Ben Folds, Liz Phair, Jordan Sparks, Rick Springfield, and of course Al all auditioned to be the Mos Eisley house band. And Al plays a Twi'lek named Weird Al Ataka Duwaka, who of course plays accordion and only sings songs about food, but it's Star Wars food like bantha milk and root leaf stew and stuff like that. So again, not on any of his albums or even on Spotify, that one or anything, but technically a song, so it's in my collection. I count it. And Al, I don't know if you guys know this, Al has actually written a bunch of Star Wars songs that may never see the light of day. Back in the early 2010s, Seth Green and Matthew Senreich of Robot Chicken fame, I'm sure you've heard about this, were hired by Lucasfilm to produce an animated series called Star Wars Detours. So I don't know why I said Star Tours Detours, but it was meant to be a non-canon Star Wars animated series set between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, which was kind of a more kid-friendly Robot Chicken-y, kind of comedic take on the Star Wars mythos. It was not pre-sold to any network. It was all paid for out of George Lucas's own very, very deep pockets. And the first season was done, totally completed. The second season was midway through production, and the third season was being written when all of a sudden, boom, Disney bought Lucasfilm. And in Disney's infinite wisdom, they effectively buried the whole project out of a complete lack of interest on their part, and none of those episodes ever got released. The most we've ever seen of it is a trailer that was shown at, I think, Star Wars Celebration 2012 or something. And then in November of 2020, a 6-minute clip from one of the episodes was leaked to Reddit. And that clip featured Al as a droid named 4LOM, 4-LOM, but that clip and the first trailer are all the public have ever seen of Star Wars Detours. And most tragically of all, in 2022, during his appearance on the George Lucas talk show, Al revealed that one of the episodes they were planning for season 3 was a musical episode, which would have featured about a half dozen original songs written or at least co-written by Al. Apparently, the voice cast actually got as far as recording those songs, and then about a week later, the merger happened, and nothing ever came of it. I think Al's demos for those songs are still somewhere on his hard drive, but no one else has ever heard them who wasn't involved with the show, and as long as the series remains lost media, we never will. So yeah, that's so. There's a lot of Al Star Wars songs that are either not generally well known or not to be heard at any point. But of course, the two big Weird Al Star Wars songs, the ones that you brought me on the show to talk at length about, are of course Yoda and the Saga Begins.
Mhm.
Yes.
So
Just on the detour stuff, because I've seen the clips of it. I love that Obi-Wan Kenobi's like a lecherous old man. It just sort
yes,
of tickles me, the clips I've seen of that, and I've seen the clips of Weird. It's funny, all you the ones you've mentioned there, the kind of lesser known ones I know of, but I just don't immediately think of them when I think of Weird Al. You know, I
Oh yeah,
automatically
yeah,
go
yeah.
to Yoda and go to Saga Begins, and then when you mention those, I was like, I have seen those things. I know exactly what you're talking about, but it's just not the immediate connection to Weird
Right.
Al.
Yeah, they're not Weird Al projects. They're Al as a hired hand or a hired voice, lending his talents to someone else's project, which is all well and good. The man gets to work whenever he wants, but they're not, these are the only two Star Wars songs that Al brought to life, with a team behind him, of course, but basically by himself of his own volition.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And with Star Wars Detours, you're saying that Al has them like on a hard drive, those songs. Do you
yeah.
think much like the leaked stuff on Reddit, do you think they'll ever see the light of day? Has Al ever kind of
Possibly.
given any indication that he would like the public to hear them or
Well, on the George Lucas talk show, he said, I don't. The words he used was, "I don't think I'm allowed to share them."
Mm,
He's very much. He doesn't want to get in trouble or anything. He doesn't, especially considering how litigious Disney is known for being. Especially for leaks and stuff like that. He wants to still work with Disney again in the future, presumably. So he doesn't want to ruffle feathers with them. But never say never.
yeah.
Someday, there's every day formerly lost media gets leaked. So we'll see what happens.
And in terms of, we'll sort of start with your fandom of Weird Al. Where does that sort of begin? And then how does it lead to you appearing in the music video for Perform This Way?
The music video. Excuse me. The music video for Perform This Way literally only happened because Al was when he made the performance. By the time he made the Perform This Way video, his record label's budget for music videos had dropped to practically nothing. It was very shoestring. This was 2011, so YouTube had taken over. The music video channels weren't playing videos anymore, and everyone was looking for the cheapest, okay, go on treadmills, go with it, the cheapest way to make a viral music video. And so the budget was so small that they really couldn't even afford to hire extras. But of course, Al being Al, he knew he had a rabid fan base of people who would love to be in one of his videos. So he just put out a call on his website. Hey, do you want to be an extra in my new music video? If you live in LA or you will be in LA on these dates, just send an email to this address and we'll see if we can get you in there. And I did, and he got me in there. He did the same thing on his White and Nerdy video. And even on, I mean, we'll talk about this when we get to it, but even in his Saga Begins video, some of the aliens are just friends and family members of his, just to keep the budget as low as possible. The Queen Amidala in the Saga Begins video is Al's second cousin, who just happened to look enough like Natalie Portman to pull it off. And by the time they shot the Perform This Way video, I'd already started my web series Some Jerk with a Camera. And in the Perform This Way video, I'm literally playing a paparazzi. So I'm literally some jerk with a camera. So that was some nice synchronicity there. And I tell you, the only thing in life better than being directed by Weird Al Yankovic is being directed by Weird Al Yankovic while he's in full Lady Gaga makeup. So that was a very nice treat. And yeah, that was fun. If you want to see me in that clip, I don't know the exact time frame on YouTube or anything, but in the shot where Al as Lady Gaga is kind of walking up some sort of red carpet while dressed as basically the Taj Mahal squid, if I remember correctly, like he's got a miniature Taj Mahal on his head, and he's got a skirt that's like tentacles or something. And I am off to the left playing one of the guys shouting while holding a camera and taking pictures. So, just look for me there. You can't miss me. But as for my own fandom, I first became aware of Weird Al via my parents. Actually, they because they'd heard of him. They were peripherally aware of him during the '80s. And when I was a kid, I remember my dad had his greatest hits album on vinyl. He played that for me once, and then my mom got me Dare to Be Stupid on cassette. And then in 1996, I remember the Bad Hair Day album came out, and that was a big deal. And I remember getting that and just listening to it over and over again. And the movie Spy Hard came out, and I saw him in that. But the thing that really kicked my fandom into gear was the Disney Channel special "There's No Going Home" that aired in December of 1996, and which was kind of a combination concert special slash sort of sketch special with Weird Al, where he does a bunch of really funny sketches about life on the road in between the performances of his songs. And I taped that special and watched it over and over again, and I was just hooked. And sometimes these hyperfixations just catch on and they latch onto you for life, and that one certainly did.
Yeah, definitely, because you yourself record music as well, and it's very.
I used to, not as much anymore, but although I did recently record, oddly enough, another American Pie parody called Smogberry Pie, about the history and legacy of the Dr. Demento show. On my YouTube channel now, as you folks are listening to this, there should be a video for Smogberry Pie that I uploaded on April 2nd, which happens to be Dr. Demento, aka Barrett Hansen's 85th birthday. So look for that on my YouTube channel, Smogberry Pie.
Fantastic.
Cool.
It's in life, I've had two chances to see Weird Al and didn't. 2015, I bought tickets to see him. I think it was maybe it's one of his first times in Belfast, and nobody would go with me, so I decided not to go by myself and regretted it ever since. Then last year was in California, no, not California, Toronto, and nobody would go with me, so I couldn't go.
Oh,
I've told Adam that he should have called me, even though we didn't know each other at the time. If we'd known each other in 2015, I would have went with him in a heartbeat. And
you should have
should've
just
just
gone
went.
anyway.
Should have
It's
just
like,
gone.
I know.
I know.
yeah, who cares if you're by yourself? It's Weird Al. Half the people there are by themselves. I'm sorry, we're not the most social of groups, Weird Al fans. It's but no, I mean that's an exaggeration. But yeah, you definitely should have gone, because he does not get to play Europe all that often. I mean I know because it's he runs such a big show with so many moving parts and so many elements that he has to lug with him on tour, that it's barely profitable for him to tour in the States, let alone go to Europe. He basically goes to Europe just as whenever he can, just as a courtesy to his European fans. But yeah, definitely next time he's playing Ireland, do not miss the opportunity.
I've already told Adam that I'll be there by his side. I'll take him this time.
Of
Thank you, buddy.
course.
And then in terms of, let's start with, was the Saga Begins first?
No, Yoda was
Yoda's
first
first?
by about 20 years, but who's counting?
Oh, let's start with Yoda then.
Al was, of course, 17 years old when Star Wars was first released in 1977. He was already a college student by then, because he skipped 2 grades and graduated high school at age 16. And he says when he saw Star Wars for the first time, he had to stand in the longest movie line he had ever seen in his life. Just like literally, you had to wait in line for the duration of an entire movie just to see the next showing of it back then, because most theaters were still single screen. And obviously it was worth it. It was just mind-blowing and life-changing for him. And by the time The Empire Strikes Back came out in 1980, he'd already started to become something of a fixture on the Dr. Demento show. If any listeners don't know who Dr. Demento is, he at the time had a nationally syndicated radio show that showcased comedy and novelty records. He was a pretty huge media figure in his own right, and Al got his start on the Dr. Demento show. He scored his first big Dr. Demento hit a year earlier with My Bologna, his parody of My Sharona. And on September 14th, 1980, he recorded his first ever charting single, the Queen parody Another One Rides the Bus, live on the Dr. Demento show. And he was toying around with the idea of writing a song about Yoda, because he was such a huge Star Wars fan. And a friend of his suggested he parody the song Lola by the Kinks, which Al says he can't believe he didn't think of himself, since he's such a huge Kinks fan. And sometime in late 1980, the precise date has been lost to history, unfortunately, he recorded what became known as the demo version of Yoda. He didn't consider it the demo version at the time. It was just the version, mainly for the Dr. Demento show, recorded at his apartment on his 4-track cassette Porta Studio with literally just his vocals, accordion, hand noises provided by his good friend, the legendary musical Mike Kiefer, and a bad Yoda impression at the end provided by Al's friend Joel Miller. That early version was first played on the Dr. Demento show on KMET 94.7 in Los Angeles on April 19th, 1981, and it very quickly became Dr. Demento's most requested song of 1981. That original demo later got released in 1997 on the CD Dr. Demento's Basement Tapes number 6, which was released exclusively to members of the Demento Society, Dr. Demento's fan club. And later in 2017, it was one of the rarities included on the box set Squeeze Box, the complete works of Weird Al Yankovic, so where you can find it now.
It's one of those songs that obviously an earworm,
Oh
but
yeah.
it is one of those ones where like when you hear the original, you can't help but sing Yoda instead.
I am one of the very few kids in the 90s who actually did hear the original before I heard Al's parody. I was, I kind of inherited my parents' taste in music. I was the weird kid who wasn't really into current music. I was into more oldies and classic rock. So, being a kid who listened to all the classic rock stations, I had heard Lola a bunch of times. So I remember the first time I played that cassette of Dare to Be Stupid that my mom got me. It's like, oh yeah, Yoda. But I actually had to ask who Yoda was because I hadn't seen Star Wars at the time when I was a kid. So I was that weird kid. I knew who the Kinks were, but I didn't know what Star Wars was. But what I find exceptionally fascinating about Yoda is that it effectively invented a whole subgenre of comedy music, which is the parody song about pop culture. Not a song about pop culture's impact on the real world, but a song set within the fictional world of a piece of pop culture. And that kind of song became extremely commonplace especially on Dr. Demento in the ensuing decades. My good friend I mentioned earlier, the great Luke Ski, he basically built his entire comedy music career off that subgenre. But I think Al was the first to do it. I can't think of any earlier examples of someone doing that. I mean, there were like audio sketches that kind of did that, like Dickie Goodman breaking records like Mr. Jaws, and sketch tracks like Star Trek by Bobby Pickett and Peter Ferrara, which were both huge Dr. Demento hits. But those weren't really songs. I think Al, in addition to all his other accomplishments, really was the pioneer of effectively musical fanfic. And it all started with his original demo of Yoda.
And do you know, did he pick Yoda because Yoda was like a favorite? Like,
Yoda was definitely the breakout character of The Empire Strikes Back. So it's like, well, if I do a song about Star Wars, he's the most memorable character. It should be about him. So
yeah. Do you think he ever considered doing one about like Obi-Wan or R2? Or I suppose, do you think he sat with like all the different names and was like, what sounds the best to a song?
Well, he
Because
did.
obviously Yoda works so well for that.
Well, he did eventually do a song about Obi-Wan, which we'll get to, but but yeah,
yeah.
I do if he'd been writing it about the first movie, he probably would have written it about either Chewbacca or the droids or something, but that's not how it went. I think again, just everyone's Yoda was such a weird conceit. Everyone takes it for granted now. Of course, Yoda's so legendary, but at the time they were making Empire Strikes Back, no one knew if Yoda would work. It's like, people were thinking, what? He talks like Grover. Are people just going to think this is some Muppet thing? Which Al mentions in his song. He looks like a Muppet, but he's wrinkled and green. But it definitely worked, and I know Yoda certainly became the most marketable character from Star Wars for a while. There, plushies of Yoda just sold like hotcakes, and he was so big that E.T. dressed up as him. I mean, come on. So it's so yeah, I and plus, you know, it went really well with the song Lola, like I said, so there you go. It was just the best idea for the best time. So and you know, earlier we were talking about the Star Wars detours, stuff that's never to be seen. Another piece of unreleased Weird Al Star Wars media is the middle recording of Yoda, because there's the demo that's been released a couple times, like I said, and of course there's the album version that everyone's familiar with. But in 1982, March 14th, 1982 to be exact, before Al even had a record deal, he recorded 9 of the 12 tracks on his first self-titled album in just one day. Al's producer, Rick Derringer, was able to use his industry connections to get them one free day in a professional recording studio to record the bulk of his album so that they could have something professional sounding to shop around to record labels. But little known fact, they actually recorded 10 songs that day, only 9 of which ended up on the first album, and the 10th was Yoda. It was a studio recording with the whole band plus Al on accordion. That specific recording has never been released publicly, ever. Al's drummer, John Bermuda Schwartz, presumably still has it in his archive somewhere. Maybe he might release it someday, but it has not been heard publicly. So that would be a really fascinating find because, as I'm sure y'all know, you know, the original demo was just Al and his accordion, and the final album version did not have accordion because Al decided he wanted it to sound more like the original Kinks track. But I would love to hear a best of both worlds version. Obviously, he uses accordion when he plays it live, so we've got some recordings of that. But yeah, I would love to hear like a proper studio recording of Yoda with accordion. That would be, you know, it's like we've always been so close to that and yet so far. Now they tried to put that version of Yoda on his first album. It would have been perfect because his first album came out only a month or so before Return of the Jedi, so it would have been a perfect tie-in, but they were not able to obtain permission from both the Kinks publishers and George Lucas. They needed permission from George Lucas because, you know, this is an interesting quirk of American intellectual property copyright law. Americans are 100% allowed to write and record and release songs about copyrighted characters. That is considered completely within First Amendment free speech rights. However, you need specific permission from the trademark holder in order to title that song the name of the character. Because that name is trademarked. That's why when Al later released the Saga Begins, he called it The Saga Begins instead of Anakin Guy. Even later, he recorded a song about Spider-Man to the tune of Piano Man by Billy Joel, and he called it Ode to a Superhero instead of Spider-Man because he didn't want to have to seek permission from Marvel. Now, Al's obtained that kind of permission before. I know when he released Jurassic Park, he got specific permission from Michael Crichton and Steven Spielberg to title the song Jurassic Park. And but you know, he didn't want to call Yoda anything other than Yoda, and really, what else could you call it? And it took a while to obtain proper permission from George Lucas. They tried again for Al's second album in 3D in 1984. And I think by then, like, they had obtained permission from the George Lucas camp by then, but the publishers of the song Lola had turned them down. And that likely would have been that, except Al had the very good fortune of actually meeting Ray Davies, the lead singer of the Kinks and the guy who wrote Lola, at an industry event. And Al asked him about it, and it turns out the publishers had never even asked him about it. The publishers had just made the decision unilaterally without even consulting the actual fucking songwriter about it. So Ray Davies, of course, gave his blessing then and there, and the next time Al recorded an album, 5 years after he wrote the damn song, Yoda was finally released on Dare to Be Stupid in 1985. Now that and like I said, it they didn't use the original 82 recording. because Al wanted it to sound more like the original, and they wanted to give themselves more studio time to make it perfect. I mean, they recorded 10 songs in one day, for God's sake. But and also, on that first album, every track had accordion on it. It was one of Al's big gimmicks, so I think he felt he had to, and it became a little overwhelming for him. So for the next decade or so, with very few exceptions, he only used accordion on the polka medleys. And to promote the Dare to Be Stupid album, there's a very cool clip you can find on YouTube of Al performing Yoda and his polka medley on that album, Hooked on Polkas, on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Which, just the fact that Al was on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson is kind of amazing in its own right. And Yoda has, of course, been a staple of Al's live shows for more or less as long as he's been doing live shows. Now, Adam, you mentioned you haven't been able to see him live. Danny, have you ever seen him live?
No, I've not had the privilege of seeing him live yet.
Okay, have you ever seen either of his concert specials or any bootleg footage of him live?
I've seen clips, yeah. I've seen a few clips and stuff, yeah.
Okay.
I have the DVD of one of his live shows.
Oh, cool. Is that the one just called Weird Al Yankovic Live, or the one called Weird Al Yankovic Live, The Apocalypse Tour? The Alpocalypse Tour.
It's that one.
It's Alpocalypse. Okay. Well, if you've watched it all the way through, and you've watched his performance of Yoda in that DVD, then you know what I'm talking about. And if not, this will be very difficult to explain, but ever since 1992, when he performs Yoda live, he has added what is called the Yoda chant to the end of it. Now, again, I am not going to do justice to it describing it. That was actually one of my big concerns while taking notes, is how the fuck do I explain the Yoda chant to someone who doesn't already know what it is? But because it really needs to be seen and heard to be believed. Basically, as the band are repeating the refrain over and over again, Yoda, yo, 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 Yoda, it's Al's equivalent of fucking na 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 from Hey Jude. But, basically, the music drops out. It's just drums and vocals repeating Yoda, yo, 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 Yoda. Then the drums stop, and it's just Al and the band chanting, and one of them starts chanting, to the rhythm, like, da din din da din din da na tin tin na da din din da, and which leads to the whole band chanting that gibberish, and that leads there's several full minutes of just a cappella chanting in various languages. Some of it is complete gibberish. And almost every tour since 1992, Al has added new stuff to it, to the point where nowadays it's just become this incredible behemoth that includes like Frere Jacques and the Hawaiian War Chant and Grim Grinning Ghosts from the Haunted Mansion, my favorite edition, and the Weemaways from Lion Sleeps Tonight, and the Ooga Chakas from Hooked on a Feeling, and again, all in perfect unison with the entire band. God knows how much they have to rehearse it every tour. Search Yoda chant on YouTube or something. It has to be seen to be believed.
See, this is why I can't get anybody to go with me to the show.
Yeah, exactly.
They can't learn the chant.
I've almost memorized the chant, but some of the foreign language parts are exceptionally tricky if you're a dumb American like me who only speaks English. Like,
how many times have you seen Al live?
Oh, dozens. Literally. I tried to count one time. I think something like tens of times for sure, like at least 30 times, possibly close to 50. I don't even remember the final total now. But yeah, I've just been obsessed with him. I know I made a word file or something just listing all the concerts, and now of course I can't find it, but what are you gonna do?
Well, it's definitely we'll get more into some jerk with the camera, but watching your sense of humor on the web series, obviously you do proper reviews of either theme park rides or theme park ride films adjacent, but
Sure.
the sketches in between are very much inspired by Weird Al's sense of humor.
Yeah, Al's definitely one of my biggest influences, particularly not even so much his songs, although obviously I'm a huge fan of that too, but my style as an on-camera, YouTube personality was very much inspired by Al's on-camera personality during his Al TV specials
Mhm.
that he used to do for MTV and VH1, and he did Al music specials for Much Music in Canada, and just his whole on-camera persona. Yeah, there's a lot of that in the DNA of Some Jerk with a Camera for sure.
Mhm. And to the point
And
where Al has appeared on your show as well.
yeah, he was kind enough to record a cameo for my episode on It's a Small World Holiday, and which I believe I've uploaded as its own separate scene. So I'll just let y'all search for that. And just a couple more, one more comment about the song Yoda. Rian Johnson himself has said in interviews that when he was writing and filming The Last Jedi, it did not escape him that he was quite literally fulfilling the prophecy of Al's lyrics. When Al sang, from Luke Skywalker's point of view, I'll be playing this part till I'm old and gray. The long-term contract I had assigned says I'll be making these movies till the end of time with my Yoda. And in fact, and we know Rian Johnson's aware of that song because, again, on YouTube, if you search for it, you can find a clip of Rian Johnson and film critic Alan Hillis performing Yoda together at karaoke in 2012. But before he even got the Last Jedi gig, very prophetic.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's maybe that's why maybe Mark Hamill held a grudge from the 80s from the Weird Al song.
Oh, is that what do you want to skip ahead to that of how because I have notes on that too. Yeah. For listeners who don't know, this was the other biggest Weird Al Star Wars thing. This isn't even lost media. This wasn't even filmed media. They weren't even allowed to make this. But in 1997, Al had a short-lived one-season Saturday morning kids show on CBS called The Weird Al Show. That, of course, was the year of the special editions, and Al wanted to parody the special editions by revealing in one episode that he had originally been cast in Star Wars as Luke Skywalker's annoying little brother, Ernie Skywalker. And then I guess he and Leia were triplets, and then they would have shown a bunch of clips of Al seamlessly green screened into clips from Star Wars, mostly visual gags, although I know one of the things they wanted to do was like, but I was going to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. But I was going to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. He was just this annoying little brother who was just pestering Luke the whole time. It was great. Stuff like that. Now, they got permission from George Lucas and from Sir Alec Guinness to use, footage of him in this. But for some unfathomable reason, Mark Hamill turned them down. Like I said, it was the year of the special editions, and I think it was just a weird time in Mark Hamill's life where he was getting tired of just being known as Luke Skywalker, even though he was the Joker at this point, so it wasn't the only thing he was known for. But, he straight up just wouldn't let them use the footage of him in the show. He basically, momentarily at least, became the real-life version of Luke in The Last Jedi, just bitter and burnt out on the whole thing. It's a real shame. That bit would have been amazing.
Maybe it's because he got into that fight with that Italian gangster, and the Italian gangster said he didn't even finish Jedi school.
Oh, yeah. That could be too. Who knows?
It is funny, like, growing up, like, we're 90s kids, and Mark Hamill, to me, is both the guy from The Simpsons and the guy from Sleepwalkers.
Right.
I was like, he was in Star Wars.
Yeah, who knew?
But moving on to Saga Begins,
Of course.
which came out the same day as The Phantom Menace, is that right?
Not quite the same day, no. It came out about a month after The Phantom Menace came out in theaters. But yeah, the year is 1999. Al's working on his 10th studio album, Running with Scissors, and he's looking for the perfect idea for a lead single. By this point, Yoda had, of course, become one of the biggest fan favorites in his entire catalog. And of course, 1999, the most anticipated pop culture event of the year was Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And Al thought, well, if I do another Star Wars song, that'd be great. Al considered several parody ideas. He even very seriously considered doing Pretty Fly for a Jedi, which an idea that eventually, of course, morphed into Pretty Fly for a Rabbi on the same album. But then he realized, for a classic franchise like Star Wars, you need a classic song. And when he hit upon the idea of Don McLean's American Pie, it had a rambling narrative that befitted a story song. And of course, it begins with long, long time ago. So it was perfect. My, this here Anakin guy. Now, Phantom Menace was, of course, released May 19th, 1999. Al didn't want to release his album too much longer after it. He wanted it to come out early enough in the summer for him to go on tour that year. So, and he famously wrote the song based on internet spoilers before he actually saw the movie. The lyrics ended up being mostly accurate. Al attended a $500 a plate charity fundraiser pre-screening a few weeks before the movie came out, just to make absolute sure he was getting it 100% right. And I think he got it like 98% right. He had to tweak a couple of lyrics here and there, but otherwise the spoilers were all spot on. He didn't have to throw the song away and start over, which would have sucked. But just to, and even though he didn't need to get Lucasfilm's permission this time, because again, the song was called the Saga Begins, and they could have done it without their permission, but Al ultimately decided, I do still want to get George Lucas to sign off on this just to make sure he doesn't get his feathers ruffled. Al doesn't like to make enemies. And fortunately, the official word they got back from Lucasfilm was, you should have seen the smile on George's face. So that was very gratifying to hear. And of course, he got permission from Don McLean, who absolutely loved the parody, even though his kids played it around the house so much that it actually confused him a lot. Like, for a while when he performed American Pie in concert, he sometimes got some of Al's lyrics confused with his own. Like, he would accidentally sing one of Al's lines in concert. It was a little embarrassing. Now, and recording the song was kind of a big challenge in and of itself, because Al is a huge, huge perfectionist and a stickler for details. And Ruben Valtierra, Al's piano and keyboard player, had only kind of, he approximately learned American Pie. And to be fair, the piano part in American Pie, particularly over the first and fifth verses, is extremely difficult to learn precisely, because on the original, the piano player, Paul Griffin, was kind of loosely improvising the specifics of the part. If you listen to it, he's basically kind of just riffing with Don McLean, in real time with him in the moment. And Al wanted all those little improvised riffs replicated exactly, which is extraordinarily difficult to do. It's like lip syncing to a spoken monologue. It's not easy. And I guess Ruben didn't quite understand that assignment, because the first day they're recording it, Al notices he's not quite nailing it, and so Al sent Ruben home to learn the part exactly, do it better, and then the rest of the band worked on something else. The next day, Ruben still didn't quite know the part, so Al sent him home again. Al just would not let it be anything less than perfect, and that's, part of what makes Al Al.
Whenever he performs it live, of course, he welcomes on to the stage the 501st.
Of course, yes, the 501st.
And that has been since the song's released to this day. If you go see him live, that is still the case.
Yeah, whenever possible, whenever he's performing in a place where there's enough of a local 501st contingent to allow for this, yeah, he has like a dozen or so stormtroopers up on stage with him, and often a Darth Vader cosplayer, which is really cool, because then when he sings, I guess I'll train this boy, he'll like put his arm around Darth Vader's shoulders, and one time, in fact, in 1999, when he performed at the Greek Theater in LA, at the end, on the line, I guess I'll train this boy, he actually brought Jake Lloyd out on stage. Jake Lloyd came on stage dressed as Anakin, and sang the final chorus with him. So that was cool. And Al says, the first few times it happened, like, all the members of the 501st acted like Al was doing them a favor when really they were doing him a favor. It was amazing. By the way, the original idea for the title and concept of the Running with Scissors album. He wanted to originally he wanted to tie it even more into Star Wars and title the album Album 1. This was his real first album, a prequel to all his other albums. No one else in Al's immediate circle thought that was funny though, so Al just went with Running with Scissors instead.
I love the production value for the Saga Begins video is fantastic.
Oh
Opens
yeah.
with him walking through the desert with his guitar, and he's in full Jedi garb, and then we
Hmm.
cut to the cantina, and you have all the kind of cantina patrons. And but what I kind of like about the masks of the cantina patrons is they're not full on like movie quality alien masks. There's a few there that are kind of like that, but I also like there's almost like a Greek theater to some of the masks as well in there. And I don't know, it's one of the Al videos that I love because of how it's put together. Do you have any notes on
Oh,
the making of the
absolutely.
music video? Yeah.
Yeah, the well, first off, they specifically, aside from Yoda's sort of cameo in the video where you see him just in silhouette in the audience, they avoided using actual Star Wars characters. The production designers and the makeup art, well, and Amidala, of course, but otherwise the production designers and makeup artists were told to just make Star Wars-esque characters, stuff that wouldn't look out of place in Star Wars. And some of the extras actually got like really bad skin rashes because they were allergic to the prosthetics. It was not fun. But yeah, that music video, it was shot over 2 days. One day in the Mojave Desert for all the desert Tatooine scenes, and one day in a soundstage for the Star Wars Unplugged Cantina scenes. And Al has described the Mojave Desert shooting day as easily one of the most difficult and uncomfortable shoots of his entire career. It was 120 degrees Fahrenheit for most of the day. Some of the crew members passed out from heat exhaustion. The poor grips who had to carry that piano across the scorching hot desert, they were particularly just not loving life.
Mhm.
And like I said, in the soundstage scenes, Al corralled some of his friends and relatives to be extras in alien makeup. Um, and fun fact about that video, it is actually kind of sort of been considered not official Star Wars canon, but in 2011, that video did get released as an extra on the Star Wars The Complete Saga 9-disc Blu-ray box set. And on the ninth disc, they had a section for for a bunch of Star Wars spoofs over the years, and they licensed clips from SNL and Robot Chicken and such, and the Saga Begins video was one of them.
I was going to say, I heard in the music video they wanted to get the giant rat from the Star Wars Holiday Special, but he wasn't available.
Oh, that would have been fun.
He was
Imagine.
busy.
Well, maybe he just didn't want to piss off George Lucas too much, because I know George Lucas he's not a fan of that special. The Saga Begins, it didn't get a ton of radio and MTV airplay, but one place it did get played a lot was Radio Disney, which added both it and Yoda to its regular rotation. And, Radio Disney was one of those, stations that just played the same, 24 songs or so over and over again. And that was one of them for a while. They were very supportive, but the first few times they played it, they had a problem with the line, "Do you see him hitting on the Queen?" That was too suggestive for Radio Disney, I guess. So they actually cut that line out entirely the first few times they played it, and it was a very awkward edit, which in Al's own words sounded horrible. And because he knew they'd be playing the song a lot, Al actually did something that he would otherwise pretty much never do. He actually went to the trouble of going back into the studio just to re-record that one line and change it to "Do you see him talking to the Queen?" In 17 years, the guy had gone to recording a whole album in one day to going back to the studio just to re-record one line. It was, that's what money and fame can do for you. And that alternate version actually did get a proper CD release on the compilation album Radio Disney Jams Volume 2, which I have a copy of, because of course I do. I'm a completist. And but the other thing is, because that song got a ton of Radio Disney airplay, obviously a lot of kids heard it, and most of those kids had never heard the original American Pie before in their lives. Now, about a year later, Madonna, I don't know if you remember this, released a not terribly good, straightforward cover of American Pie to tie into her really not terribly good movie, The Next Best Thing. And that really confused a lot of kids at the time. Why is Madonna singing an unfunny version of a Weird Al song? What are these lyrics about James Dean and shit? I thought this was a Star Wars song. What is she doing?
That just
Um,
unlocked a memory for me. I haven't thought about that song, her version of that song in years.
yeah,
It's so bad.
it's not good. Because it doesn't like. Well, anyway, this isn't the Bash Madonna podcast. That's I'm on that next week. But anyway, but yeah, the Saga Begins and Yoda have, of course, been huge favorites, both of of fans, both hardcore and casual, for many many years. They've been perennial. The Venn diagram of Star Wars fans and Weird Al fans is practically a circle. So obviously those two songs are huge among his fan base. And in the time since he first recorded Yoda in 1980, I literally don't think he's ever done a single concert where he didn't perform at least one of those two songs. More often both. Like ever since the 1999 tour, his typical encore is to just do both Star Wars songs. In fact, that's why he never got around to making a third proper Star Wars song. When one would think, well, when the sequel trilogy came out, he's got to complete his own trilogy. He did one for the original, one for the prequel. He's got to do one for the sequels, right? But he considered it, but ultimately he decided, if I record a third proper Star Wars song and it becomes a huge hit, I'm gonna have to extend that encore to 3 songs, and then it's just gonna become the Star Wars show, and I don't know if I want that. So yeah, I mean, like we said, he recorded stuff like Scarif Beach Party and the unheard Star Wars Detours musical. But as for actual singles that Al put out himself of his own volition, where he wasn't just a hired hand, it's just those two. And
Mhm.
and I mean, Al has referenced Star Wars quite a few times, of course. Like his White and Nerdy video featured visual homages to both the infamous Star Wars Kid and the Star Wars Holiday Special. Al was in a documentary about the Star Wars special called "A Disturbance in the Force" a few years ago. And in UHF, his movie, there's a scene where Stanley Spadowski, played by Michael Richards, swings his mop around and it makes the lightsaber sound effect. And in his concert-only parody, "I'll Repair for You," to the tune of the theme from Friends, "I'll Be There for You," he has the line, "With stucco, bricks, and plaster, I am a Jedi Master." So, Al's very much aware of Star Wars, shall we say.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Do you think with the likes of Spaceballs 2 coming out, another fantastic Star Wars parody in the world, do you think now is the time that you maybe would consider a third, now that we've kind of got like more Star Wars contents come, as you say? The perfect time would have maybe been around the sequels, but we've got all the TV content that's come since, and now Mel Brooks has kind of been like, I think now's my time to do Spaceballs 2. Do you think Weird Al would maybe consider a future Star Wars track, or do you think he is just like, nope, I don't want to do a 3 hour long encore. I'm
Yeah.
gonna leave it there.
Yeah, I think the latter. I think he realizes, I don't want to have to extend the encore much longer, and also he's not entirely done with recording songs, but he hasn't released an album in 12 years now. So I just, the last single he released, the last proper single, was his polka medley, Polka Mania, which came out in 2024. And he also released a polka medley of the songs from Hamilton back in 2018. And when Weird the Al Yankovic Story came out in 2022, there was a new song attached to that, Now You Know. But and he'll often pop up on like animated shows where they ask him to sing a song or something, and I'm a hardcore collector. I collect all his rarities, even on the most obscure little show he does. But as I think he's pretty much done with parodies at the moment. The last proper parody he released was were the parodies on his Mandatory Fun album 12 years ago now. So yeah, I don't think another Star Wars song on the level of Yoda or the Saga Begins is in his future, but never say never.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
they're certainly never going to stop making Star Wars movies. Even now that the sequel trilogy's done, they got the Mandalorian and Grogu coming out this summer, and and what's the name of the movie that's coming out next summer? The
Starfighter.
Starfighter. That's right. Yeah, Sean Levy's directing that, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So there's Disney's never going to stop trying to milk that cash cow. So never say never. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think with Mandalorian and Grogu, he's missing a trick by not doing a Grogu follow up to Yoda. But
Grogu,
just saying, yeah,
Grogu, Grogu. Yeah, maybe,
yeah. I mean,
maybe,
I think it would work, but
maybe like if maybe hire like a kid to be like Lil Weird Al,
Mm,
Li
yeah,
apostrophe L Weird Al. I don't know. And he
yeah,
could do
yeah.
baby Weird Al, just a little kid with a mustache and glasses.
Just get Daniel Radcliffe. It's fine.
Sure, yeah, he's perpetually 10. That's how
Yeah.
everyone sees him.
If I'm sure it's like asking you to pick your favorite child, but between the Saga Begins and Yoda, which do you prefer?
Mm. If forced to choose, I think I got to go with Yoda because and I love the Saga Begins, but it's not one of Al's funnier songs or his funnier videos, and Yoda just has that great energy to it, and I got to give Yoda extra points for the Yoda chant that he does live, of course. So yeah, I'm gonna say Yoda.
Gonna go for Yoda. Okay, okay. And what about in general? Again, asking you to pick your favorite child. What
Oh,
about
in,
in
in
general?
my favorite Weird Al song of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say, "Everything You Know Is Wrong" on his Bad Hair Day album. It's a pastiche of They Might Be Giants, which is one of my favorite bands of all time. So right away, I'm gonna like Weird Al doing a style parody of They Might Be Giants, and "Everything You Know Is Wrong" just has some of the most bizarre lyrics I've ever heard in my life. I remember the first time, like that song more than any other one song really made me hyper fixated on Weird Al. It was the second track on Bad Hair Day. Amish Paradise, of course, was very funny, but then to launch into something as brain melting for a 13-year-old as Everything You Know Is Wrong, it just permanently warped me, and I've never been normal since. So yeah, that's got to be my all-time favorite.
Nice. And what about your collection? Your where you said you sort of tried to pick up like every piece of Weird Al memorabilia and stuff linked to his appearances. But what is the weirdest Weird Al thing that you own?
Ooh, that is really tough. The weirdest Weird Al rarity. Well, specifically, I collect Weird Al rare songs. I collect songs that that songs that he's recorded throughout his career for whatever for various projects. God, the weirdest one that would be really. You know what? I'm gonna kind of throw you a curveball and say that one of because it's weird because it's Weird Al, the weirdest thing he can do is be normal.
Mm,
And every so often, like whether it's for sometimes it's for a show or something, he'll perform just a straight ahead song that just works as a song. A few years ago, Al did a voice on a Disney Junior series. Like this is a show for preschoolers called Firebuds, which is basically like the premise is similar to the movie Cars, but there's also humans in the world, and the cars talk to the humans. It's for preschoolers, whatever. But Al voices a VW Beetle or a VW van, basically, and and he does a song called Take the Blue Sky Highway, which is basically a Tom Petty pastiche. It sounds like something Tom Petty would have recorded in the 90s or something. And it's just a really good song. It's not a funny song by any means. It's just a song about, about kind of trusting your instinct and not worrying so much about everything. And it's a song I'll just have in my playlist just as a song. And so honestly, the weirdest thing Weird Al can do is be normcore, so I'm gonna pick that.
Good, very good.
And Tony, sort of to jump into just solely Star Wars, where does your sort of Star Wars origin story start?
Well, like I said, I didn't hear. I had never seen Star Wars before I heard the song Yoda, and my parents were like, "Yeah, let's show Tony Star Wars. Why not?" And I saw it, and I didn't dislike it, but it just kind of, I was born in 1983, like 3 months after Return of the Jedi came out, so I very much grew up in a post Star Wars world. And I liked it just fine, but it didn't blow my mind the way it did for so many people in 1977, of course. But then when the special editions came out, that's when I got a little more interested. I saw all 3 special editions in theaters, and I saw the prequels, which obvious. It was the kind of thing where everyone saw the prequels basically, even though we kind of knew after a while they wouldn't be very good. I remember I said this on my podcast when we covered Revenge of the Sith, but I remember I saw a midnight screening of Revenge of the Sith, and I remember sitting there in the theater, and you saw the original title, a long time ago, and the Star Wars logo, after the Lucasfilm logo. And I remember sitting there thinking, you know what? I'm not going to nitpick this one. I'm just going to shut off my brain and enjoy a nice pew pew space movie and have a good time at the movies. And then the opening crawl comes up, and of course the first word is war in capital letters with an exclamation point. And I just remember thinking, God damn it, George. 3 letters. That's all it took. That's all it took to remind me that this is stupid. It's just war, exclamation point. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. But, so Star Wars was always, I always, it was never something I disliked, but it wasn't something I was ever like obsessed over, like you fine gentlemen obviously are. And it was always something that kind of, definitely existed, something I definitely was aware of and I enjoyed. But I never got really obsessed with it until, well, I still don't know if obsessed is the right word. I really don't know how you guys feel about this. I hope I'm not making enemies when I say this. I fucking loved The Last Jedi. For me, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know if it's better than, A New Hope or Empire, but I remember just when I saw The Last Jedi, and I recorded a vlog of Last Jedi with a bunch of my friends. We all loved it. And I remember recording that vlog, and we're literally like we opened the vlog with us all just going, "Oh my God, it's so good!" and just falling out of our chairs, in giddy revelry. So imagine our shock checking the internet immediately afterwards and seeing that everyone hated it. I mean, I still kind of don't know what happened with that movie. I think people just got, enslaved by their own preconceptions of what the movie was gonna be. But I fucking love The Last Jedi, so I, of course, wasted a fucking year of my life trying to convince people online that The Last Jedi was good, actually, and after a while, and then, The Rise of Skywalker was such a disappointment on every level. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's interesting to me that the Star Wars prequel and sequel trilogies are almost perfect inverses of each other, in the sense that, prequel trilogy, George knew exactly the story was in broad strokes was something that George had in mind for years and years and years. He knew exactly how he wanted the story to go in broad strokes. He didn't really have a handle on the execution all that well. The story, he knows it, but he knows exactly where the story needs to go, and it's just the execution where it fails. And the look of the movie kind of looks like shit to me. There's too much CGI. And it's not terribly good CGI, especially by today's standards. But with the sequel trilogy, they had no idea where the story would go going into it. They were completely flying blind. They were making it up as they went along. Uh, but the execution really works well, and the execution carries them along for long enough that it takes until Rise of Skywalker for everyone to really realize, oh, they had no idea where they were going with this. This was a house of cards the whole time. And and for the prequel trilogy, first one's bad, second one's worse, third one's actually kind of decent. Sequel trilogy, first one's good, second one's great, third one's The Rise of Skywalker. At least that's how I feel. I'm sure there are many varying opinions. I know there are many varying opinions online. Well, how do you guys feel about it? I'm sure you've talked about it on this podcast, but
Yeah, we haven't actually properly delved into the sequels, but we have sort of generally talked about how I think we're both big fans of Force Awakens.
mm,
I really enjoy Last Jedi. I like that Rain tried to do something different with it, and it's
right,
just
right.
unfortunate that there, as you say, there's that inconsistency across all three of those films that just makes it seem kind of jarring
Well,
from, you know,
The Last Jedi really isn't all that inconsistent with The Force Awakens.
no,
Ryan
no.
is doing what he can with what he was set up, and I think he was really, I really blame The Rise of Skywalker for basically trying to pretend The Last Jedi didn't exist and retconning. No, Rey was Palpatine's granddaughter, and somehow Palpatine returned. What are you doing, Change? But anyway.
Yeah, no, no. Again, that's it, and it's that there then that creates that. But I really like what Rain tried to do with it. And again, it's
Yeah,
one of those
yeah.
things, as you say, with kind of George, where it's kind of like some of the execution may not have been perfect, but I would love to have seen what he would have done if he'd just been given a fresh Star Wars project to work
Oh
with.
yeah.
Because I think he
I
could have
would
done something incredible.
I would have loved to see honestly at this point I would have loved to see Colin Trevorrow's take on episode
Mm.
9. I mean he was I mean I know the Book of Henry wasn't very good, and I don't like Jurassic World that much, but I feel like anything would have been an improvement. I mean, I do know that oh man, I know that after Patty Jenkins made Wonder Woman, there was very serious talk of her taking over on episode 9. And then all of a sudden we heard the news came out that not only was she, that she'd do episode 9 instead of doing Wonder Woman 2, and then the news came out not only was she doing Wonder Woman 2, but she was getting like the highest salary that any female director has ever gotten. And I just know, I will bet you anything what happened behind the scenes was that Lucasfilm offered her episode 9, and she went back to Warner Brothers and said, this can go one of two ways. And you either give me this job or I go direct episode 9. Oh, if only they let her. If only Warner Brothers had had just said no, go ahead and direct episode 9. Then maybe episode 9 would have been better, and Wonder Woman 2 probably would have been better. Good God, we got the worst of both worlds.
I love Last Jedi, and I really enjoy
Awesome.
the Force Awakens. With Rise of Skywalker, I hated it at the time, but much like the prequels, the sort of surrounding media around the movie has improved it for me. Me and Danny have spoke before about like the sequel books or the comic books or video games, and they're back in the day when I sort of fell out of love with Star Wars and thought, Attack of the Clones, it's terrible. Revenge
Mm.
of the Sith sort of lost me for a long while. Then returning to watch like the Clone War animated series, to read the books, it's a cheat code in the terms of the movie itself isn't great, but people, it's what's best about Star Wars. It's like the extended universe and the people that work in that realm
Mm.
have told the best story they can, which holds up the weaker stuff.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's no matter who you are. I think absolutely everyone can agree that Star Wars is a very inconsistent franchise. Unless you're just one of those people who hates all of Star Wars, like unless you're fucking John Simon or something who just famously despised Star Wars and everything it stood for. But it's I personally, partly just because I wasted a fucking year or so of my life just arguing with people online about it. Star Wars has just kind of become exhausting for me at this point. I know I watched the first like season and a quarter of The Mandalorian and kind of and didn't and then it just kind of lost my interest, and I haven't really checked out any of the other Disney Plus Star Wars shows, except of course for Lego Star Wars Summer Vacation because Al was in it. But yeah, I don't even know if I'm gonna see The Mandalorian and Grogu this summer. Like I might not, honestly. But it's but but the good stuff will always be good. And my I mean Rise of Skywalker, I remember I actually kind of had the opposite reaction to you, Adam, in the sense that when I first saw it, I was trying to like capture the good. Also, I recorded a vlog about it right afterwards, and I'd spent so many years. I think because I had spent so many years defending Last Jedi, I was just like, well, I really want to like this one. I want my love of Last Jedi to have been justified. So I'm kind of it's like sand slipping through your hands, and obviously Anakin hates sand, so you're trying to grab onto the good things about it, and I came out of that movie thinking, well, okay, it was a mess, and it didn't all work, and these things were stupid, but I kind of like this, and I kind of like that. I was picking at the things I did like about it, and then over the following weeks, it was one of those movies where the more I thought about it, the less I liked it. So yeah, that's that for you.
Mhm.
Me and Danny always have recommendations for people that fell off the movies and never watched the TV shows. Danny, do you want to give your Skeleton Crew pitch?
I shall indeed. I was ready to because I was like, I know it's going to lead you into yours, but
Mm.
my Skeleton Crew pitches. Tony, are you a fan of Treasure Island or Treasure Planet?
Yeah, especially when there's Muppets involved,
Of course.
and I
Yeah,
know lots
okay.
of Star Wars creatures resemble Muppets, so
Exactly. So there we go. We're already on to a winner. Are you a fan of Goonies?
I like Goonies. I think Goonies was a little before my time in the sense that I've seen it once or twice, and I thought it was okay. I'm not like obsessed over it like some of my friends are, and like a lot of people are, but it's fine. It's good.
Okay, okay, but just in terms of then that cozy feel you get from
Sure,
watching a
sure.
Spielberg Amblin film,
Oh
perhaps
yes,
then?
absolutely.
Okay, so you've got your Treasure Island, Treasure Planet, you've got that Amblin feeling, that lovely autumnal, sitting at home cozy by the fire, all in the world of Star Wars. That's Skeleton Crew. That's what I give to you with Skeleton Crew, is
That
that's
is
what I could promise you.
that is what I've heard about it. I also know that a creature that very much resembles Fuzzball from Captain EO is
Yes.
in Skeleton
Yep,
Crew.
Exactly. So
So I
winner?
mean,
Is that a
there's a
winner?
point in its favor right there for sure. Yeah, I've heard good things about Skeleton Crew. I've heard a lot of good things about Andor in particular.
Mm.
Even
Oh yes.
people who seem to hate modern day Star Wars seem to love Andor. Yeah, I'm sure I'll check it out at some point, especially if the randomizer on my podcast picks either of
Oh,
those things.
of
So
course, of
so we'll
course.
see.
Well, Andor season 2 is not just great Star Wars, it's just great TV. Like I
Of
hold it up
course,
in
yeah, that's
regard
what
of
I've
like
heard.
Sopranos and Breaking Bad and that sort of
Mm,
stuff. So yeah, 100%. But yeah, Skeleton Crew is my Disney Plus Star Wars show. That's my a good comfort watch.
very cool.
But Tony, have you ever heard of the Moped Gang from the Book of Boba Fett?
I have not. No.
Oh, you're
Adam, get your
imagine a
picture.
gang. You know the movie Quadrophenia?
Oh yeah.
Imagine that in the Star Wars universe, post-war, driving modified mopeds, not very fast in a chase, but will allow it because these kids are the hippest kids in Mos Espa.
Sure.
It's dumb and a lot of people make fun of it, but it is one of those things I've said it in podcasts so many times. It's like if there was a war, what do teenagers do? Like what do you do after the war? And it's sort of like you do become the goths that go
Yeah.
and hang out at the weekend. Um and it's just
Y-
the show itself isn't fantastic. It's a bit flawed.
So
Um
so it's like 50s juvenile delinquents or something,
yes.
or
Yeah.
oh, but like fucking the Fawns or something in Star Wars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well,
Um,
I mean, Lucas did make American Graffiti, so there's that
Hmm.
connection. So
exactly. It's that sort of, they're taken from American Graffiti.
sure.
It's just not, some people say it's not done very well. But I think it's pretty good. Speaking of Lucas making other things, just want to, because I listened to the episode when it originally came out, but then I refreshed your podcast, Escape from Walt Disney.
Mm.
We haven't covered on this show a specific movie yet, but
Oh, I'm so
qu
bad at
quick thoughts on the movie Strange Magic.
Ah, strange magic. Well, well, just the basics of it was that it was a Lucasfilm animated film. I think, unless you count the Clone Wars movie, it's the only feature-length film released by Lucasfilm Animation. Uh, it was directed by Gary Rydstrom. Came out in January of 2015, so post merger. So it was another thing that they were working on when the merger happened, and it was and unlike Detours, which was just straight up canceled, Strange Magic was. Detours was completely buried. Strange Magic was sort of effectively buried. They did release it, but they released it in January and didn't give a lot of promotion to it. And I don't think they even released it on Blu-ray. They released it on like a bare bones DVD, and of course now it's on Disney Plus. But Strange Magic was basically Spielberg was Lucas's attempt to make what he called Star Wars for girls, even though Star Wars was already Star Wars for everyone. But it was these fairies that took place in this magical like forest realm, and there's like an evil bog king who, spoiler alert, actually kind of turns into the male love interest for the main fairy. And there's a love potion, and it's kind of an adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream, but of course there's all this sort of, Lucasian subversion of and combination of tropes and things, and it's a jukebox musical. That's the other thing about it. It's a fucking jukebox musical. So and I just found, so when the randomizer picked it a few years ago, I just found it completely intolerable. I could not stand Strange Magic. I thought it was absolutely terrible. But my three guests on that particular episode, for whatever reason, just loved it. Charlie Callahan, Haley Baker Callahan, and Gabby Tyrell, all otherwise very kind, fun, intelligent people. At least I thought. I love them to death, but God, I really disagree with them on Strange Magic. They loved it for some reason. I think it's because, in fandom circles, like especially Haley's favorite movie of all time, she will tell you, is Labyrinth, which of course was a
Mm.
George Lucas production where which had kind of a problematic semi-sexual relation between the teenage girl protagonist and the ostensible villain of the piece, Jareth, played by David Bowie. And there's a history of, especially on Tumblr circles, of like the villainous male characters who become like sex symbols. Like Jareth from Labyrinth is definitely one of them, but also like the Onceler from the Lorax, and a few others, of just villainous characters who nonetheless, teenage girls on Tumblr just swoon over. And George Lucas, whether he intended to or not, was basically appealing directly to those girls by making a movie where the big evil bad guy, played by Alan Cummings, by the way, Alan Cummings does the voice of it. So right away, you've got that, that weird sexual tension of that. And a movie where the villain basically turns into the male love interest. I mean, that's I think the way Gabby put it was, I hope George Lucas realizes what he's done here. I hope he realizes what this movie is for people, for the gals, the gays, and the theys. To which I said, there's got to be some gals, gays, and theys out there who understand that this is trash. I mean, but what are you gonna do? No accounting for taste, I guess. But yeah, the Strange Magic episode, just because of that weird dichotomy where I'm the only person in the room who sees that the emperor has no clothes effectively. But that's mean. I'm the only, they got something out of it that I just couldn't, and it's my show, but I'm still the only one who doesn't like the movie. It was a fun episode for that dynamic at the very least, and you can find that episode on my YouTube channel. I recently uploaded it there.
I think Strange Magic. I do enjoy Strange Magic, but I enjoy it as a trash watch. Like I will
Sure,
watch
sure.
movies
I
because
that
I
I
enjoy
could
them for
see.
their being trashy.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see watching it as a trash watch for sure.
Yeah, and I think what I like about it, because I kind of drew comparison, not in terms of its narrative, well, kind of the narrative in terms of like the wee characters and the animation and where it was kind of set, but 2013's Epic from Blue Sky, I
Oh
kind of
yeah,
feel it was so in quite close proximity to that. I think it was kind
very
of
similar
like
movies for sure.
overshadowed by Epic, because Epic is good, whereas Strange Magic, as I say, it's a fun trash watch.
Epic is
Um,
okay. We don't have to spend too much time talking about Epic, but
Another trash watch, you say?
well, it's not. Epic is not trash. It's one of those movies that I feel like could have been 10 times better with just 10% additional effort. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like
mhm, mhm.
like the story just wasn't quite there, and I thought the comic relief characters were kind of annoying, and I don't. It had some good elements to it, but it just didn't quite stick the landing for me.
You mean you didn't appreciate fellow Irishman Chris O'Dowd?
Oh, I love Chris O'Dowd, but in this movie, but not so much as a talking slug or a snail or
Mm,
whatever he was in
yeah,
Epic.
yeah. But yeah, I think it's one of those things. I think Strange Magic, as you say, it kind of got left behind, and I think it's definitely a fun one for whenever when I have kids, I'm definitely going to show them Strange Magic because it'll give me like a reason to go and watch more like Lucasfilm things and kind of
Sure.
ease them into the way of Lucasfilm. But yeah, it's not one that I return to a lot, but we're definitely talking about it sometime, Adam, for the podcast. Just you wait. After we talk about Red Tails, of course.
Of course, yeah. Have fun with that for sure.
The month of alternative George Lucas movies: Red Tails, Strange Magic, American Graffiti 2.
Oh my god! Oh, more American Graffiti. Yeah.
Hmm.
Good. Or are you going to cover Howard the Duck?
Oh, hell
Or
yeah. Absolutely. Talk about trash
or
watches, fun
yeah,
trash watches.
absolutely. Oh my god.
Show with those duck titties.
Duck tits. Woo.
But I think, Tony, we'll wrap it up now, only because I hope if you enjoyed this, you return in the future to maybe do a full episode on Star Tours with us.
Ooh, I would. That would be fun. Yeah, sure. I'd love to cover Star Tours with you folks.
Fantastic, because I want to get into the whole your career of subject with the camera and your Star Wars, your Star Tours episode, and then also we'll
Right.
talk about Batu and stuff. But Danny is going to Orlando for his honeymoon this year.
Oh,
Gonna go
cool.
in December, so I've done Disneyland Paris Star Tours when I was younger, but this will be my very first time doing Orlando. So yeah, we'll wait until I've been, and then we can go like
So this
full throttle into it.
Well, then this will be your first time going to Galaxy's Edge, then, and
Oh
riding,
yeah,
Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run and Rise of the Resistance. I'm
I'm
sure
so
you'll want to do
excited.
full. I'm sure you'll want to do full episodes on all three of the Star Wars rides. But yeah,
But of course.
Hmm. Yeah, it's one of those like we'll get into when we talk about Star Tours in a future episode, but I just uh, as much as I love modern Star Tours, I wish Danny you could have seen the Paul Rubens
Oh,
Mm.
yeah.
Rex
Well,
romance.
well, the ride film for the original 1987 Star Tours is on YouTube
Mhm,
in pristine quality, in like
mhm.
4K quality. So you can watch that and just pretend you're moving in synchronization with it.
Just getting Una to move the sofa for me while I'm on
Yeah, yeah.
it.
And you've seen pictures of Captain Rex, so just pretend
Yeah.
he's in the corner, just with Paul Rubens' voice.
I'll just have to buy one of the wee figures and just like set it
Sure,
beside me,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I
Just
found a
set it right
figure.
by your laptop.
Yeah.
I have the Funko Pop of it, but I found a Black Series figure of Captain Rex, and I'm very tempted to spend a lot of money.
Do it.
Well, what else is money for? I ask you.
Exactly. We're about to welcome in a new war. Money means nothing.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for joining us, Tony. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you, and thank you for all of your Weird Al knowledge. We couldn't have done this episode without you.
No, my pleasure. No problem at all.
People can find your podcast, Escape from Vault Disney, on YouTube and every other place you find
Well, not
podcasts.
so much YouTube. I've got a scant few episodes
Mhm.
of Escape from Vault Disney on my YouTube channel. But anywhere else you find your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, whatever your pleasure is, the podcast Escape from Vault Disney, where my guests and I review movies, TV shows, and short films available on Disney Plus, chosen completely at random. The podcast has been on it was on a bit of hiatus earlier in the year, but it's back now as you hear this episode. I recently released an episode on the live action Little Mermaid movie and an episode on the Disney Junior series Vampirina. And in fact, the next episode that's gonna be released after this podcast is an episode on the 2023 is a Lucasfilm connected film, an episode on the 2023 documentary Timeless Heroes, Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones,
Mm.
which is a documentary about Harrison Ford and the Indiana Jones franchise, that is available to watch on Disney Plus. And the next episode that'll be released as you hear this will be on that. And in the meantime, there's over 150 episodes in the archives, including several Star Wars episodes. We've covered Revenge of the Sith, an episode of The Mandalorian, 2 episodes of Star Wars Visions, and my favorite, a few years ago, we released an episode. We released a gimmick episode of Escape from Vault Disney, where we covered the original Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope from an alternate timeline where it came out in 1977 and flopped. And we're watching it as though it's this weird, obscure relic from the 70s that none of us have ever seen or heard of. So that was a lot of fun. We've also done episodes on other Lucasfilm projects, Strange Magic, as you mentioned, and we did an episode on Willow a few years ago. So go check those out as well. And on my YouTube channel that I mentioned, youtube.com/Tony Goldmark, you can find all 3 seasons of my 2010s theme park web series, Some Jerk with a Camera, where I did several episodes on Star Tours. And you can also find those episodes. I also have a playlist of all the Star Wars videos I've ever made, including, like I said, my Some Jerk with a Camera episodes on both iterations of Star Tours, and my vlog on Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and my vlogs on the various Star Wars movies that have come out in the last decade or so. So find all that on my YouTube channel, and you can follow me on Blue Sky at tonygoldmark.bsky.social.
Fantastic.
Wicked.
The Galaxy's Edge video, your vlog, I rewatched recently, and when the great Luke Ski sees the Millennium Falcon for the first time, I had the
Oh
exact
yeah,
same reaction.
that is a great moment.
Yeah,
Yeah, the fact that they actually built the damn thing, that is fantastic.
yeah. Danny, our event in April.
Yeah, so next Saturday, the 18th of April, something strange and unusual is coming to Ballymena. Strange and Unusual, a celebration of science fiction and horror, will be landing at the Braid Arts Centre, Ballymena. We have 20 traders, artists, small press, cosplayers, as well as special guests such as Hugh Ross and Luisa Guerrera, the newest Toxic Avenger, shall all be making an appearance. And yeah, the tickets at the moment are only £10. It'll be £15 on the day, so be sure to get yours now, so you can get them that bit cheaper. And yeah, we've got a lot of exciting talks. We also have the short film More, starring my fine self, and I'll be doing a Q&A with the director as well on the day. So be sure to go to the Braid ticket office website to get yours today.
But thank you everybody for joining us. Join us next week for more fun and shenanigans in the stars. And as always, we have friends everywhere. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Grifters creak and the tombstones quake. Spooks come out for a swinging wake. Have your haunts materialize and begin to vocalize. Ring grinning ghosts come out to socialize. Fairy Jacka, Fairy Jacka, Fairy Jacka, Fairy Jacka, Fairy Jacka, Fairy Jacka, Fairy Jacka,